Hey everyone! Today we are going to continue our learning about time. This will be lesson 3 using AM and PM. Our objective for today is to use AM and PM to show morning, afternoon, or night. Our second objective is to order events by time. You will need a pencil and your math workbook. So let's do a little bit of review. What is the time on each of these clocks? I'll give you a minute to think. How would I write this in digital time? Remember that digital time has a colon in between the two numbers that tell us what time it is. And remember to start with the hour hand and then to do the minute hand. Let's check our answers. So the first one is 10:30. The second one is 12:45. Just remember, that one's not quite on the 1 yet. So it can't be 1 o'clock. It's still 12:45. Then I have 9:15. I have 6 o'clock. I have 7:30 and 9:45. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at 6 o'clock. I have a question for you. What do you normally do at 6 in the morning? Is that different from what you do at 6 at night? What you normally do at 6 in the morning is probably very different from what you do at 6 o'clock at night. When we think about it, I know that I normally wake up somewhere in between. Maybe you guys wake up in between 6, 6:30. Maybe you're lucky and you wake up at 7. But we wake up in the morning and we typically start to get ready for bed at night. So around 6 at night, you might not be getting ready for bed, but you're probably eating. Maybe you're watching TV with your family. Maybe you are just getting home. So there's a huge difference between what we do in the mornings and what we do at night. So we need something to tell us, well, are you talking about the morning or the night 6 o'clock, right? Those two 6 o'clocks are very different. So we need something to tell us the difference. To write the time after midnight but before noon, we use AM. Okay, that's A and then a period and then M and then another period. That's because it stands for something. So this is an abbreviation. And we learned a little bit about abbreviations, right? That means it stands for two words. So I'll tell you what those stand for in just a minute. To write the time afternoon, but before midnight, we use PM, or P and then a period and then M and then another period. We have to have those two periods because we know that it stands for something. So to write the time after midnight but before noon, we use AM. This AM stands for ante meridian. Try and say that. Ante meridian. Okay, this means before noon. So that word ante and the second word meridian, those kind of sound funny, don't they? Those are words from from a different language called Latin. So a lot of the words that we use in English stem from a different language called Latin. So sometimes those also are similar to what you will hear in Spanish, right? So if you know the word in Spanish for before, it's antes. So if you can see, it's ANTE. It's very similar to the Spanish word for before. So that's why we say AM. It stands for something that means before noon. So if you'll look at the chart down here, we can see that before noon, or AM, is any time after midnight but before noon. So midnight occurs when you are asleep, most of the time, I hope. It occurs when you are asleep and then you wake up, you might go to school, do math class at school, and then noon, 12 o'clock noon, is when you eat lunch. Okay, so when we're at school together and we go out to the lunch tables, or I send you to hot lunch, that is exactly 12 noon. So that's the differences between midnight and noon. Again, it's like 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. They're super different. But a.m. is for any time after midnight, but before noon. P.m. is for everything else. So to write the time after noon, but before midnight, we use p.m. p.m. stands for post meridian, and that means after noon. That's kind of cool, right? That's how we always say, oh, it's in the afternoon. That's what PM stands for, literally afternoon. So if you'll see on this chart, we can see this is typically when you leave school and you eat dinner, you go to bed, you're asleep. So all of those activities happen in the PM. So what I want us to do is take a look at a second grade day. I pulled this from our schedule. It's a Monday in second grade. And I want you to think, what events occur in the AM and what events occur in the PM? I have the chart down here for us to help think about it. So just as a reminder, the AM is any time after midnight, but before noon. So what activities on this list do you think would be after midnight, but before noon? Well, let's read it. From 8 to 8:15, we have morning work, prayer, and attendance. From 8:15 to 9:20, we typically read with our MIDI helpers. From 9:30 to 10, we do a spelling pretest and our morning meeting. There's a hint, morning meeting and morning work. From 10 to 10:20, you go to recess. Then from 10:25 to 10:55, you have Spanish. Then from 11 to 12, you have math. Think, am I still in the AM or the PM? What events are occurring in the AM and the PM? The last events are lunch at 12 noon to 12:45, whole class science from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, music from 2 o'clock to 2:30, and then dismissal at 3. Let's see, which events occur in the AM or before noon, and what events occur after noon? Well, I definitely know that these events that are in the orange occur in the AM. I know that because sometimes I think about AM like in the morning time. Like when I wake up, I get ready, I go to school, I do some morning work, we do prayer in the courtyard, we go to recess in the mornings, we have Spanish in the mornings. Those things all occur in the AM. Now, math is a little bit tricky. Do you think math occurs in the AM or in the PM? And remember, it has to be before noon. So math starts at 11 o'clock. I know that at 11 o'clock is still in the AM. However, I need to change this for math to say 11 o'clock to 11:59. I need to change that because once the clock goes to 12 o'clock, it is now in the PM. So technically, math might go like 1 minute into the PM, but for those 59 minutes from 11 to 11:59, that is still the AM. Then, the moment that the bell rings and I send you to the lunch or to the tables, that becomes PM because it is now noon. And 12 noon means that is in the PM. Okay, it is in the post meridian. It is after noon. So from 12 to 12:45, we have lunch, and that's in the PM, right? All of these things, science, music, and dismissal, that all occurs after noon. So we would say, for example, whole class science is from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. So if I were to take our afternoon and I was to make it longer, let's say you do some activities after school that day. Well, let's think. How far does the PM last? When does it become the AM again? So we know the PM is after noon, but it is before midnight. Okay, let's think. I go to soccer practice from 4 to 5. I have homework to do at 6. I eat dinner at 7. I go to bed at 8. Are those events all in the AM or the PM? Well, I know that those are going to continue to be in the PM because if 3 o'clock was the PM, we're still continuing that pattern. And we haven't hit 12 o'clock yet. So we know that those are still in the PM. Then I go from 8 o'clock to 11:59. I'm sleeping. Hopefully you're sleeping at those times, right? So you're sleeping. Is that still in the PM? What about when I get to 12 o'clock midnight? Is that still in the PM? Or from 12 to 6:30 when I'm still asleep? Or at 6:30 when I wake up for school? Or at 7:30 when I arrive at school for a new day? When does the AM start again? Think about it. If you had to pick one activity on this list where the AM started, what would you pick? Let's check. So, I know that all those events, homework, dinner, bedtime, sleeping, those are all still in the PM. Now, up until 11:59, it is still the PM. But once the clock changes to 12 o'clock, I am now back in the AM. This always normally occurs when you're asleep. So sometimes we think, oh, I woke up at 6:30 and it was now a new day. Well, actually, Tuesday started at 12 midnight, at 12 o'clock midnight, or 12 a.m. So if you've ever stayed up for New Year's, we count down until midnight because a new day starts, right? And then it's the new year. So once a new day starts, we go back into the AM. And technically, that's just very early in the morning. It's not super late at night. So we stay up at midnight like that because it starts a new day. But hopefully, for the most part, you're normally sleeping when midnight occurs, and we go back into the AM. So then you can see from the chart, from midnight to 6:30, you're still sleeping. Maybe you wake up around 6:30 and you get ready for school, and you arrive at school around 7:30. Those activities all occur in the AM. So we can't always say that when we're sleeping, it's PM. That would be wrong because, well, we know that the AM starts at 12 o'clock midnight. And even though we're sleeping, it is the AM. When you go to bed, it's the PM. And when you wake up, it has been the AM for a few hours. So let's practice. I want you to read these with me and think, am I going to use AM or PM? This is exactly what you will do in your workbook after. So let's try this one. It is 4 hours after midnight. The time is 4 o'clock. AM or PM? 4 hours after midnight. You can use the chart at the bottom to help you. Remember that midnight is when I'm normally sleeping. So if it's 4 hours after midnight, it is 4 o'clock AM, right? It is still in the morning. It has not become PM yet. If I said 4 hours after noon, that would be p.m. But 4 hours after midnight is 4 o'clock a.m. Let's try another one. We eat lunch at 12 o'clock. A.m. or p.m.? Let's look. We eat lunch at 12 o'clock p.m. If I said we eat lunch at 12 o'clock a.m., that would mean we eat lunch at midnight. We don't eat lunch at midnight. We eat lunch at 12 o'clock p.m. or noon. So noon is always 12 p.m. and midnight is 12 a.m. Let's try one more. I go to my friend's house 5 hours after noon. The time is 5 o'clock. A.m. or p.m.? 5 hours after noon. So you can check out the chart where noon is. 5 hours after that. Would that be in the a.m. or the p.m.? Exactly, it would be in the p.m. So I know that it would be in the p.m. because it's 5 hours after noon, not 5 hours before noon. 5 hours before noon would definitely be in the a.m. But since it's 5 hours after noon, I know that that can be 5 o'clock p.m. So how can I order the 3 events that we just talked about together? The 3 events we talked about were we eat lunch at 12 p.m. I go to my friend's house 5 hours after noon, so the time is 5 p.m. And it is 4 hours after midnight, so the time is 4 a.m. If I asked you, well, in what order did those events occur in one day? How would you order them? What happens first? And what happens last? I know that I probably didn't eat lunch first, right? Something else occurred before 12 p.m. Well, I know that the days always start with a.m. The days always start with a.m. So I'm going to go ahead and say that 4 a.m. comes first. Then I just have to order 12 p.m. and 5 p.m. Which one comes very last? Well, I know that 5 p.m. comes last because it is 5 hours after noon. So this is the order we can put those in. 4 a.m. comes first because it's in the a.m. Second comes lunch at 12 p.m., which is right in the middle of the day. And last comes going to my friend's house at 5 p.m. Those are the order of the events in the day. If I said that something else occurred at 2 a.m., I would have put that before this one. That one would have gone first because 2 is smaller than 4, so that occurred first. We're going to do some more practice with ordering events today and tomorrow. If you get stuck on ordering the events in the day, I want you to bring up this page and check out the bar at the bottom to help you order them. So we have midnight to noon, or the a.m. in yellow, and then we have from noon to midnight in green, or in the p.m. That visual will help us a lot when we're thinking about the order of events. So good job today, everybody. We learned how to use AM and PM to tell the time in the morning, the afternoon, and night. What I want you to do now is go ahead and complete pages 109 and 112 in your math workbook. You will do just what we just did, fill in AM and PM just like we did in our examples. Then I want you to upload a photo to Seesaw when you are all done. I will see you next time.